Hey everybody, Vincent Ayala here today to talk to you about the multi-viewer on the new Encore3.
So far, I have created 5 single output screen destinations, 1 dual output screen destination, a few inputs, and I've imported a couple of stills. I'm going to use this output as the MVR output. But before we get started, I want to point out something that eludes many users new to Encore3. The MVR is internally created. Well, what does that mean for us? That means that while we can dedicate an output specifically to the MVR, we could also use it as a source on any layer used in a screen output or as a source for an aux. Additionally, we can assign it to any available output, not just HDMI. I've already created a video that shows you how to assign the multi-viewer directly to an output in the Processing and Outputs video. But I'm going to show you how to create the MVR as a dedicated output again really quickly. We'll click on the MVR in the detail view and we'll open that MVR tab on the right. We'll select the resolution that we want to use and then assign the output. We could do this for both connectors or we could do a single. For example, I'm only going to assign a single connector. Once we assign our desired connectors, we'll hit Apply Changes and boom, we're done. Time to move on to the MVR page on the left. Click the MVR page and that will bring us to the MVR customization page. As you can see, Layout 1 is auto-populated already. This is another example of our user-assisted workflows. But let's say you don't want to use that pre-populated layout. We'll just switch over to Layout 2. Here we can customize the multi-viewer by adding windows from the All Sources tab. Like this, I'll click this drop-down and it will expose the available sources for this multi-viewer. But before we start building, let's take a look at this page. On the left, we have our All Sources tab, where we can choose the sources we want to use on our multi-viewer. Up top here, we can choose to enable or disable the multi-viewer, choose to focus on a specific multi-viewer, or view all by clicking this button. On the right, we have our multi-viewer tabs. Here we can adjust the multi-viewers, the windows, apply templates, and use multi-viewer presets. So let's start building a custom multi-viewer. As I said, we can simply drag and drop the sources from the left. So let's drag a few inputs into the multi-viewer. Now let's drag the destinations. Remember, if you want to see the preview and program on the multi-viewer, you must drag them both out. Here we have the windows that we can start to manipulate by clicking the sides or corners to resize or drag them and drop them where we like. I'm not going to waste a bunch of time trying to make this look pretty before we take a look at some of the features in the tabs over here on the right. Okay, so looking at this first tab, the Multi-Viewer Setup tab, we can adjust the resolution of the multi-viewer, enable or disable the HDCP mode, change the colors or the border, UMD, or the background. But here's a new feature in the background adjustments. We can use a color or a still. Now, I've added a still to the Encore3 before I started this recording, so we can find that here in the still index. Let's leave that still active and move on to the next tab, the Adjust Window tab. Here, we adjust the parameters of individual windows. We can enable tallies, adjust the scale of the window, adjust the size of the window, record and apply custom sizes. And here's an example of those custom sizes. And finally, we can change the UMD label. Remember, this does not affect the inputs or source name anywhere else in the system, only on this multi-viewer. Moving over one tab, we have given you some multi-viewer templates to use as starting points if you so choose. You simply select a template to apply it, then you will drag and drop a source from the left onto an empty window to populate the template. And finally, we have the Multi-Viewer Preset tab. The Multi-Viewer Preset tab allows you to enable or disable the selection of a multi-viewer. Here's a quick example. I'll leave both multi-viewers selected and save a preset. Now I'll only select one multi-viewer and click Save. As you can see, when I recall these, it will reflect the status of the multi-viewer when saved. It does not affect the layouts or templates. This feature is super useful when using a controller, selecting windows in the multi-viewer, or when you just want to affect a single multi-viewer. Now, let's take a look down below for some additional features to help customize your multi-viewer. Here we can copy layouts from one multi-viewer output to another, select all, which will select all of the windows in the selected multi-viewers. We can enable the border, UMD, and AOI markers. We can auto layout our inputs or destinations. We can clear or refit the windows. And finally, on the left here, we can align absolute or align relative for our windows. Again, if that doesn't click right away, I'll give you some examples of those buttons on the programming page video. Speaking of the programming page, I'm going to jump over there and make some quick changes to the preview and program so we can see this happening in real time on our multi-viewer. I'm going to go near silent and perform this freestyle because I don't want to explain the programming page just yet. That will come in a later video. As you can see, I'm creating compositions on the preview in the programming page, and they are reflecting on the live multi-viewer output. As stated, I will save the program explanation for another video. Well, that about wraps it up for multi-viewers. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us at Encore3@Barco.com. Thanks and take care.